Hey, I'm Michael Dyrynda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 167 of the North Meets South web podcast.
I was trying to look back at our last episode and see what we said we were going to talk about on this one. And
Definitely said you were going to talk about something.
yes, we did. I was going to listen back. And I think we talked about we talked about coffee machines, talked about dynamic directories.
You want to talk about my coffee machine again for a second?
You want to? Yeah, let's do it. Go for it.
So while you figure out what you were going to talk about. So I got the machine and it's been great. It tastes wonderful. The coffee was just like miraculously better, changing nothing except the machine. But it was noisy. And I thought, I'm coming from a certain kind of machine and I've changed to a fully automatic machine. So I thought it was just part of the course. But it was about a week and I emailed the place that I bought it from and I sent them a video of the end to end of me turning it on, brewing, whatever else. And I said, just set my expectation level here. Is this normal loud or is this too loud? And they went, yeah, that's probably a bit loud. It may not be pumping water properly or something like that. So I had to drop it off on Monday at the supplier for them to look at it. So hopefully I get it back
Brand
soon.
new.
Brand new, yeah. I don't want them to fix it. If it's brand new and it's not working properly, I would like a new machine.
Exchange it, yes.
Yeah,
this is what I tell my wife.
Figure out what's wrong with it and all that kind of stuff. So
we're talking about getting a different car and stuff, and I'm like, she's like, she wants to get a newer one, and I'm like, because she's like, because then there won't be as many repairs and stuff, and I'm like, there's no guarantee on that actually. I know plenty of people who have newer cars than I do who have had their shop in the car way more times than I have.
The shop at the car, hey? I love it when you take the shop to the car.
Did I say that? What did I say? They've had the shop to the car way more than me. Yeah. So they've had their car to the shop way more than me. Sorry. I think there's actually a word for that. It's called a spoonerism. Although I think that's actually when you switch the first letter on a word. So if I was going to say the alarm will sound, but I said the alarm will sarm. That's like a spoonerism. That's when you switch the letters and stuff. Yeah. I don't know what it's called when I did what I just did a minute ago. The car to the shop.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
We've all been there. It's 10 o'clock, right? Hey, we had a basketball game tonight. That was fun. Nice. Graham scored 13 points, and that was awesome. Had some rebounds, some steals. It was great. It was fun game to watch. They lost at the last. They lost by 3, I think, or something like that. It was rough lost, but it was fun. It was good times. So
you don't mind being belted, and you don't mind handing out the belting, but you never want to lose a close one. I think that's the worst feeling.
You would never want to lose what? A close one?
You never want to lose a close game. Yeah, that's always the worst feeling.
Hurts. It hurts. But you know what? This team doubled us up in points last time, and this time we stayed right with them, and they only beat us by 3.
Moral victory then. So. Moral victory.
Exactly. Moral victory. That's what I told my wife. I was like, yeah, exactly. It's it feels good to have stayed that close. And then we did have the lead at one point, but just never could keep it. They have some more talented team players, but whatever.
Playing social basketball, it was all right, if we get within 10 points on this team at the final buzzer, we'll call that a moral victory.
Exactly. We didn't technically win, but in our heads, we won.
That's right.
So anyway, yeah, good times. Hey, I found out what we were going to talk about. There was 2 things. There was one was Prezet, which is interesting.
The documentation thing, right?
Yes. So, we looked at a couple different options for documentation on our site, and VeetPress is good. Works really well. A lot of really cool plugins and things like that for VeetPress. However, if you need any sort of protection around different documentation, it's kind of an odd one to try and figure out.
Authentication you're talking about.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Authentication around a VeetPress site. So especially if you're talking about Laravel authentication, and in this case, I am talking about that specifically. So VeetPress just got difficult to do that with. We tried it. We found some way to do it, but it was just a little bit goofy. And so I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So anyway, Prezet is good. So let me give the quick pitch for it. So it's basically just, it's Markdown, but it's just Markdown powered, but it looks a lot like VeetPress. So it has the documentation sidebar thing, and then it renders it really nicely out in the main area there. And it uses Common Mark, Markdown stuff, and a package by the league, PHP league, to render all that stuff. And then, allows for all those different plugins and things like that. Actually, Aaron Francis Torchlight also has a plugin, like a common mark plugin for this. So you can use Torchlight for all your syntax highlighting and things like that as well. So it's really good. It really works very nice. And then the other thing that you have access to, since it's literally just a Laravel package, is you could pull out the controllers and those sorts of things and customize them to work for you. So the way that we did this, which I thought was pretty cool actually, is there was sort of 3 requirements. Number 1, I wanted to be able to hide it behind authentication. Check, easy. It's just routes. So you just protect it with the middleware, no problem, super simple. The second thing was I wanted to be able to host my developer documentation in here as well, but only show it in local environment. So like I wanted my, it's already rendering Markdown. Like we write all our documentation stuff for like our local development team for this repo in Markdown. Like just throw it in there. Like, so I have a nice rendered place to view it. So what we did is in the front matter of the Markdown, which is also something that it allows, we just put a environment. And so you just say environment : local. And then in the controllers, you basically say, if there is an environment in the front matter and we're not in that environment, don't render it. And also don't show it in the nav. And also don't show it in search results. So good, no problem. And then the last thing I wanted to add is I wanted to add permission-specific pages. So if a page has front matter and it has the word permissions in the front matter, it uses a gate check to see if the currently logged in user can see that page. And so that's pretty cool. So like we've got like a pretty comprehensive set of checks that we have in place to see if somebody's allowed to view any of these different items, which allows us to do some interesting things. So the thing that we talked about last time, I'm pretty sure, is that, the different carriers that we represent, the insurance carriers that we represent, we don't necessarily want to advertise to the whole world that we're doing that. And so for people who are going to be coming on to use this platform, they will only be able to see documentation specific to those insurance carriers if they happen to already have a partnership with them. And so that was sort of the trick, right? The schema for these different sort of data graphs will be available to people, but only if they have the permission to see it. And so that's really nice. So all I have to do is on that Markdown page, I just say permissions and documentation.insurance name. If they have it, great. If they don't, it won't show it. Won't show in the nav, won't show in the search. All good. And so it feels really nice. And it just feels like Laravel. It's really simple. Like anybody could jump in, and if they know Laravel, they could kind of modify and customize the things. So yeah, that's been pretty neat. We covered it on Laravel News not too long ago, and it's been good. It's a little bit slower than VitePress. Obviously, VitePress is like it's not dynamically. It's like it renders it down to like a static site, and then it uses server-side rendering and like an SPA to like cache down all the pages as soon as you reload the first one. And so it's lightning fast. And if you're like on an airplane, you don't have Wi-Fi, doesn't matter. You load up the documentation once, you've got every single page available to you, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Really good. Didn't give me what I needed. So Prezet was the solution. Yeah. So yeah, pretty good.
All of this stuff, if you need it to be quicker, it's not really going to be that slow, but if you need it to be quicker, you can always use like sparsity caching. There's a package that they have that you can do all that kind of stuff, or you could put it behind Cloudflare, and Cloudflare will handle caching all these things for you as well, potentially as well. So yeah, it's good though. It's nice. It's touted as a markdown blogging for Laravel to transform your markdown files into SEO-friendly blogs, articles, and documentation. So it's got a bit of a variety there. I'm looking kind of looking kind of not. It's getting to that time where I haven't written a blog post in about 4 years. So thinking about writing some more content in the new year. And of course, before you can write any content on a blog that you haven't written to in 4 years, you've got to rebuild the whole thing. So I'm looking at the options at the moment. I was looking at Statamic yesterday because it's probably long overdue that I start playing around with that as well. So don't know what I'll settle on, but I'll check this out as well before I decide what I want to do.
Yeah, it's good. It's worked really well for us. I think the thing that really attracted me at first was the fact that it looked so much like VitePress, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. Let me try this out." So yeah, seems to work pretty well. And it's got all, like I said, it's got all that league stuff. So the documentation is really good, very customizable. The one thing I'm still trying to figure out right now is how to customize how some of the elements are rendered.
Right.
So like if you have like a code fence, like triple backticks, that's fine. There's actually not that much of that in my documentation because I'm not typically writing out like code for UI documentation. That's more like on the API side of things, but our API docs are actually different. And it's all handled with code highlighting and all that stuff. It uses stoplight actually for our API docs. So different story. We're not going to go down that path right now. But if there is a like single backtick where you know, kind of how that works. Like if you do this like in Telegram or in Slack or whatever, it kind of highlights it with a different color, puts a border around it. Yeah. That. I don't like the way that it renders right now. And I have not yet been able to figure out how to change it. What I really want to do is I want to show it like that. I want to highlight it. Right now, all it does is just bolds it and makes it black. It's like, it's not great. And it doesn't really call it out. Like for me, I use those backticks to call out anything that's like if I was saying, you know, this webhook will post to this location. Post is going to be in all uppercase. And then I'm going to backtick it, right? I'm going to surround it. And so like they can see this is not just a normal word. This is like a call out, a special call out here. You know,
which I think is just the Tailwind Pro's formatting, like the typography plugin, which this is using for pros. That's like its default styling for inline code, which is that.
Is that all it does? The pros does that?
Yeah.
That just bolding?
Yeah, so it does
really?
when you backtick it. Yeah, it handles. So the backtick is then gets translated into like I think an inline code.
It's a code element,
yeah, an inline code tag. Yeah,
interesting.
And so that styling comes from Tailwind's typography plugin, which you know when you add.
So
pros,
I suppose I could probably just override that then.
Yeah, you should be able to just edit the Tailwind config to make that whatever you want it to be. Yeah,
nice. Okay, I'll just do that. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for the heads up. I should have asked you sooner. Hey, how much is how much would I need to pay you to come work for me, Michael? You don't need to disclose that on air. We can have the discussion privately.
It's the whole international thing. I think is the trickiest.
I know, dude. That's the trick. That is the trick.
I'd happily
how are things going in your developer world though? How are things going for you guys? I don't feel like I know we've talked a lot about Laracon and you know all that fun stuff, but like you know, what are some things that you've been working on that have been interesting or challenging? And while you talk, I'm going to go grab something real quick. I'll be right back.
I've been in a bit of not burnout. It's just a bit of struggle town post Laracon because we have Laracon in November, and November when you take that time off, I then after like a week of Laracon become very emotionally drained and like the brain just stops functioning from all of that thinking and planning and socializing and whatever else. So coming back from that, it takes like a week. But then apparently because I'm getting older now, like it took me 2 weeks to get out of that. And it's just been difficult to kind of get back into the groove of things. But slowly coming up now and kind of picking up some bits and pieces that I had sort of started before Laracon, and then there was like for various reasons had to stop and then come back to it. And then because I was like, you know, a bit of a zombie after that, I was not really ready for it in terms of doing anything. And so by the time that I got back to picking it up, it was just like, okay, where was I up to? What was I doing? How was I doing it? And I started off, I'm like, oh, wait, I've already done a whole bunch of this stuff. So it's like figuring out where I was up to.
Yeah. Kind of catching back up to where you were at, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, finally got back into that. So what we're doing is between us and our big brother doing the whole passing of organizational structures. Like if you think you've got a company and a company has directors and has shareholders and all of this kind of stuff, but then one of the shareholders of the company is another company. So then you want to like traverse that tree down to find its directors and its shareholders and all that kind of stuff. So we're like passing that between systems and then going back to pulling that into our system and then putting it into our structure. So it's like recreating all of this stuff. So it's just been a bit of recursion fun for me. And so, just getting through that and getting back on track. So we're caught up and ready to go on that. So now it's just like pulling in all of the financial records and attaching them to the correct thing. So that's been the main thing. It's not anything overly interesting. Like there's a documented spec which we found some like gaps in terms of we could send like some of this data in some instances but not in others, and so then we had to go back to the what are they called, the caretakers or whatever, the curators of the spec, and we're like, we need, this is here and this is here, and we've seen bits of it in other places but we need it to be here. So we had to then explain, why we want to do it, justify it, get them to add it to the spec. So now we're like working on this like ephemeral state of that spec where we want to say, okay, this is the future state that we know is coming when they tag that version of the future spec. So we're just going to like build against it for the time being to handle all of this kind of stuff. So it's been a bit of
coordinate releases and all that stuff.
Yeah. So fortunately, we don't like, we're only using this future version of the spec internally in our own stuff. And so it means that, we can work together to say, okay, you're going to send us this in the format that we have established is what is coming in a future version. We'll just build our side of it, on this side of the fence to then handle all that. And then we've got to like bring all that across when the data moves between the two systems. So
this stuff gives me so much anxiety. I hate that crap.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I don't get nervous or anxious about a lot of things, but those sorts of things, I just get so like, oh, there's definitely going to be something missed. We're going to forget something. It's not going to get, it's not going to get translated correctly, and it's just like, ugh.
The worst case scenario for us is that we just end up with an orphaned record. Like a person gets brought across, but we don't link it up properly, so it's still attached to like the overarching application. It just doesn't get labeled correctly. And so when the user of our system then comes in, they can go in and go, okay, well, I just need to go and like assign this role to that person, and then they'll like get linked up again, and then we'll address that as we go. So it's not the end of the world, but because stuff is coming from the CRM, which is supposed to be like a living, breathing account of like, this is the stuff in as it is. You're constantly talking to your customer. They might, for a company that is taking out commercial loans and things like that, they might do 2 or 3 of these a year. So you're constantly talking with them to like see what their current financial situation is, what they might want to do, what you might suggest to them. Whereas the applications, when they come across to our system, they're a snapshot in time. So we can't really rely on our information once a loan settles. We go, okay, that's gone. That's done. That's what it was at the time that it was set. Fine. But with the CRM, it means that we have to bring all this stuff across to stop the user from having to enter it in the CRM and then also have to enter it again in the application. So like we just want to make the process as seamless as possible in terms of getting this information.
You guys are doing the
across.
hard work to make the customer experience so much better. I feel like that's the thing that like, when you're a developer and you call into like some internet service provider and they're like, enter your phone number, or it looks like, are you calling from a phone number that's associated with your account ending in 2255? And you're like, yes. And they're like, okay, are you Michael? Yes. Okay. And then it's like the customer representative gets on the line and says, okay, could I get your name? And you're like, yeah. You know my name, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, and your phone number, what's your account number? It's like, are you kidding me? You just asked this.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the same thing. It's like, you've already put it in the CRM. How can you not just fill it in for me? It's like, it's complicated. It's not that easy. Like, there are systems here. There are more than one system. We've got this stuff. We got to get moved over. So I get it, but
And then we've got the fun of, okay, we assume that the stuff in the CRM is live, but when it comes across, it may be that they didn't update. Like they might not have the current quarter's financial data, so they would update it in the application. But then we have to figure out, okay, well, we need to push that back into the CRM and go back the other way. And so there's this whole.
Oh boy.
Where it's like, we don't want it to be automated because like we don't necessarily track the IDs of the records in the CRM. The CRM doesn't keep track of IDs inside of our system, and so like trying to push data backwards and forwards is risky because you don't want to like blow it up. So
right.
Lots of fun and games there, but we do what we got to do. And we make it as easy for the users as possible and like lots of these users very good in like dealing with finance and loans and lenders and things like that. But using a computer, they're like, not necessarily tech savvy. Fortunately, like I think a lot of our customers are because like our platform is all online. So it's, But you still get some that are like, begrudgingly using this because this is like, yes, it is the easiest, but they don't necessarily enjoy using computers, which is still a thing that we have to deal with. So we try and make things as simple as possible, and as intuitive as possible, which is challenging sometimes. So
for sure.
Yeah,
I've got an interesting challenge for you if you're up for hearing about it, or maybe I'm just asking for your opinion. Really, there's two other things we could talk about. One is the saloon thing that you were talking about earlier. We could talk about that. Sure. That'd be interesting, maybe. But here's the other one I was going to pitch to you today, which is this: I'm developing a product, but I have people who are going to be choosing to integrate with this product before they actually have real data in the product. Okay, so let me try and do a better job of explaining that. So I have claims that are going to be coming into this system. Once you're, as a subrogation vendor, once you're hooked up with the carrier, you're going to get claims coming into this system. However, if you get integrated into this system in advance, then when a new carrier signs on, you're already fully integrated. And so like all of your stuff is good to go. The question is, how do you do that? Well, as I've been thinking through it, it's like I would really like to have some sort of like test or sandbox environment for them, for a person who's signed in, who's signed on. Ideally, I've never seen anything better than Stripes, right? You switch over to sandbox mode, you get over the API keys, it gives you the right API keys for test mode. Everything that you do is persisted, but just to the test side of things. It feels awesome, right? It just feels really good. And so that's what I'd like to do, something like that. However, as I thought about it, I was like, I don't really want to like bifurcate my database into like test and production. I don't want to have, or like sandbox and production. I don't really want to have to keep track of that. So I was like, if I just put it at a second domain, like if I just put it like sandbox.myapp.com, then I could ensure that the database is completely separate, and I could just blow it away and rehydrate it with more test data if I wanted to, sort of thing. Does that seem like a reasonable option to you? Basically, just have the app deployed in both locations. The biggest difference would be that I would have a sandboxed database over on the one side that there's really no risk of leaking any data. So I can kind of be a little bit more messy with it, like as far as like what they have access to, what they can see, what they can do. But in that way, I can essentially seed the world and then say, use all our APIs, use all our stuff, like just change your API key and your endpoint, and it'll give you all the data that you would need.
Yep.
That's going to simulate the real environment. I feel like that's like the easiest lift for the team.
Just because it's the app to another environment, basically.
Sort of, that's it. Yeah, exactly. And then the only thing that I would have to do there is I would have to, like, if I have a new vendor coming on, I would have to like set them up twice, essentially. Once in the production app, once in the sandboxed app. But that doesn't seem like too bad.
Yeah, you could automate that as well.
Yeah, totally, you could.
It is possible, so long as like you're always deploying the main branch to both of those environments. The trouble with sandbox environments is that they sometimes drift out of sync with so you want the deploy to just go to both environments. You always want to deploy the latest version to both of those environments. Right. A deploy on the sandbox environment may trigger some additional like do a migrate fresh seed only on there, and it like pulls in all of whatever for that environment only. I don't think that's too far out of the realm of what you might want to do, and it's probably, as you say, the easiest approach. And for like people that you're onboarding, I think having a separate environment that has a separate set of keys, a separate set of endpoints, like that's all fairly commonplace, I think. The other thing, as much as I like poo-poo the idea of multi-tenancy, this may actually be a way where you could do that in a similar way to what Stripe does, where you've got like the toggle in the dashboard that puts it into dev mode, and that would like flag your account to say like I'm in dev mode. And so as part of your bootstrap process in your app service provider, you could check like, am I in dev mode or in live mode? And if I am, like dynamically switch out the database. Yeah, connection.
That would be, you could probably, I probably could do that.
And that way, it's always the same, well, you'd have different keys, but you would have the same endpoints, all of that stuff would be the same. And it would just like, the data would be, you'd be hitting a different database. You do slightly increase the chance of like leaking data between production and the sandbox environment, because you might might miss a spot, or you might not switch the database. But if you're doing that at the top level before anything happens, and dynamically switching the database on a per user basis, then I think that would be okay. But yeah, there's probably a lot more thought that would go into that approach as opposed to just spinning up a sandbox environment and then
because like I'd have to kind of catch stuff on the outside edge to know. So like if they're coming in with an API token, I'd have to be like, okay, is the token prefixed with test? Okay, if it's prefixed with test, then I'm gonna have to sort of swap out the database, then do all my checks, then do all my stuff. It's like, it just seems like maybe I almost think I'd just like to keep it separate and have them deal with a little bit of inconvenience on that, but it's not that bad, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to be hitting a sandbox environment, it's probably going to be their developers anyway. So they're going to be doing it from their local development environments, or it's going to be from their own sandbox environments, in which case they're going to configure only sandbox keys in there as well. Yeah. And that would probably be better for you from a compliance point of view as well, in terms of like, there's only ever going to be staging data here.
Yeah.
Only ever going to be data that we've seeded, we've used Faker, we've done whatever. And then you could even schedule that like daily or weekly to just like roll the data out and things like that. That does introduce like a bit of annoyance as well. Like if it's one sandbox environment for everyone, you know, if everyone's putting their own stuff in there, like it'd be segmented by user. But if you were to schedule, like every time you deploy it, it just like drops everything. Well, then any of the data that they've been testing with would suddenly be gone. So that may be something that you know want to consider what you're doing. Like maybe you're not dropping all of the users or all of the like clients or whatever, but you're doing other things. So there is certainly a consideration to be had there around that as well.
The interesting thing is that this application is for as far as they're concerned, is mostly reads and less writes. The writes are more like, hey, did you upload the thing in the correct format? And then we're like, thumbs up, it worked. You know what I mean? Like it's less about like, you know, they have to check and make sure that it actually went all the way through. Like we do that. Like the only thing they really need to do is validate that their structure is correct, and that they can export it and then like upload it. And it's like, oh, yep, it worked. You know, so there's a couple different things. And then the only other thing I would probably do in that sandbox environment is I would probably give them the ability to do certain things like trigger this event. You know what I mean? Like we have notifications hooked up that are very similar to how Spassy does it with Odir. It's really, really cool, actually. We should talk about that next time. Yes, we'll talk about that next time. How they do their notification channels. It's really, really good. So, yeah, let's talk about that next time. But I'll let you know how we kind of come along with our sandbox adventures. It's
it'd be interesting.
Started thinking about that today.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And we could talk about OAuth, setting up OAuth as well. SAML OAuth stuff.
Not a fan of that.
Like allowing customers to set up their own SAML 2 stuff. That's what I'd like to do.
SSO,
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, hey, we're going to wrap this one because you got to go to Moana. Moana 2. Moana. Make way. That's a good song. Hey, what episode are we on, Michael? I forgot.
167.
167 podcast .laravel.news. Just kidding. northmeetsouth.audio/167 for show notes. Rate us up on your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be amazing. Hit us up on X or Bluesky at Jacob Bennett at Michael Dyrynda and North South Audio. Thanks, everybody. Until next time. See ya.
Bye.